I divorced the woman I had loved for 10 years. In the 7th year of secretly loving Ruyan, she said to me, "Let's get married." In the 3rd year of our marriage, I said to her, "Let's get a divorce." In the 10th year of loving Ruyan, I filed for divorce. The reason was she hadn't come home after work for a long time. I drove to her office to find her. But standing downstairs, I saw her with another man. I recognized him immediately. That man was her ex-boyfriend, the one she had been entangled with for 5 years. They stood on the steps together. He was in a suit, tall and handsome. She had her hair in soft, large waves, looking delicate and gentle beside him. They weren't holding hands or embracing, yet there was an intimacy that no one could penetrate. I glanced at our chat history. The last message I sent her was still there. "Are you coming home for dinner tonight?" She hadn't replied. It had been a long time since she regularly responded to my messages. Every time I asked, she would say she was busy, but it turns out she wasn't too busy to chat with another man. I didn't approach them. I just stood there quietly watching. Ruyan's smile felt unfamiliar to me. Only then did I realize she hadn't smiled at me for a long time. We were supposed to be the closest of partners. But every time she came home, her face was cold. I thought it was because she was exhausted from work. Turns out I was simply not the one. Who could make her smile anymore? She glanced casually in my direction. Her expression froze instantly. Then she said something to the man beside her, and his smile faded. He still waved at her, glanced at me once, then turned and left. Ruyan walked over, opened the car door, and sat in the passenger seat, frowning as she asked, "What are you doing here?" I calmly replied, "I came to pick you up from work." "Didn't you say you wouldn't let Lin Ki join your company?" Ruyan's frown deepened. Lin Ki is a proper Yale graduate and worked at Morgan Stanley on Wall Street for years. Where else could I find such talent? Why shouldn't I let him in? She was starting to get impatient. "Can you stop thinking about love and relationships all the time? Look at him now. Several companies are fighting to hire him. If I didn't know him, he might not even have come." There was no attempt to hide the admiration in her words. I stared at the distant stream of cars, lights interwoven in the night, and said nothing. When we got home, Ruyan still didn't speak to me. She went into the study and slammed the door shut forcefully. She was angry. She didn't realize that she only got angry when she felt guilty. Only someone like me, who had spent 10 years by her side, could understand her so well. But sometimes I wonder about myself. Why did I know her so well? It might have been better to remain ignorant. This clear-headed pain was unbearable. I didn't even bother to explain myself, nor did I throw a fit like I usually would. We just stood separated by a single door. After a moment of cold silence, the study door was forcefully pushed open. Ruyan, her face dark with anger, said, "What exactly do you want?" "I'll tell you ... I can't fire Lin Ki. Either you accept it, or we get a divorce. Nobody's going to die just because we split up. Let me tell you, and you. I cut her off, softly saying, "No need to fire him. Let's get a divorce." Ruyan froze. "What did you say?" She seemed to laugh in disbelief, a hint of mockery creeping into the corners of her eyes. "And I'm not joking with you. You should stop this nonsense. There's no negotiating when it comes to Lin Ki. Don't come at me with tough words now, only to come crawling, crying, and begging later." She sneered like a dog. Ruyan had always been so harsh with her words. The first time we argued like this, I locked myself in a room and didn't come out the entire day, feeling like my heart was going to shatter. But now, the pain in my chest was just a faint sting, quickly replaced by numbness. I didn't argue with her. I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and placed them on the table. "I've already signed the papers. The house is yours. I'll keep the cash and the car. It's about a 50-50 split. If you have any other requests, we can discuss them. Ruyan fell silent. She looked at me with a trace of disbelief. Then that shock turned into anger. She grabbed the papers, glanced through them, and coldly said, "You've got guts and you. Once I sign, there's no turning back. You'd better be sure." I handed her the pen. Ruyan's face darkened instantly. She snatched the pen from me, and without hesitation, signed her name with swift strokes. She threw the divorce papers in my face. "Tomorrow, we're getting divorced," she said, fuming with anger. "Whoever doesn't show up is a coward." I nodded. 9 a.m. tomorrow. I've already made the appointment. She was stunned for a moment, and I said nothing more. I closed the door and returned to the guest room. Outside, I heard the sound of things being smashed. I lit a cigarette, the scent of tobacco slowly diffusing into the white mist. I took a deep drag. How did it come to this? At the beginning, I had wanted happiness too. I married Ruyan in a flash wedding. To her. The relationship had come out of nowhere. But for me, I had been secretly in love with her for 7 years. Back then, she had just broken up with Lin Ki. While they were together, I had never interfered. It was only after they broke up that I joined gatherings where she was present. At one class reunion, she drank a lot, her eyes turning red by the end. I knew it was because of Lin Ki. At that time, Lin Ki had just received his acceptance letter from Yale. But Ruyan had already taken over her father's company, planning to develop her career in China. They couldn't convince each other. The couple, who had been in love for 5 years, ended up going their separate ways after a heated argument. As we were leaving, several friends, knowing I had always liked her, nudged me with smirks, telling me to take her home. I had no choice. I called a cab and helped her in, half carrying and half supporting her back to her place. Ruyan collapsed onto me. The scorching, soft sensation made my heart race. My thoughts were in disarray, and I didn't know where to put my hands. Clumsily, I reached out to turn on the switch. In the darkness, she whispered something drunkenly in my ear. It was slurred and unclear. I didn't quite catch what she said. I thought she was calling me. The warm breath, laced with alcohol, swirled around my ear. My whole body stiffened. I couldn't control my reaction. When she leaned in to kiss me, I didn't move away. The next morning, Ruyan seemed calm, as if nothing had happened the night before. I awkwardly left. She didn't contact me again. I stayed home for several days, until I finally gathered the courage to send her a WeChat message. "Are you free today? Want to go watch a movie?" Ruyan didn't respond for the entire day. Just as I had completely lost hope, she suddenly called me. Her voice over the phone was emotionless. "I'm pregnant. And you, let's get married." I still remember how I felt when I heard her say those words. For the first time, I truly understood what it meant for one's heart to bloom with joy. It was like fireworks exploding right inside my chest. The euphoria was dizzying, even more than winning the lottery. I suppressed my overwhelming excitement and calmly asked her, "Do you love me?" "I don't want you to marry me just because of the baby." Ruyan was silent for a long time, avoiding my question. "Don't overthink it. Come find me later." After she hung up, I clenched my fists tightly. My mind was filled with the image of Ruyan in her high school uniform. 17-year-old Ruyan. Love had come without warning, and I had fallen deeply, hopelessly. I don't know when I first fell in love with Ruyan. Was it during late-night study sessions, when she rested her chin in her hands and smiled at me with her crescent-shaped eyes? Or was it when she placed a milk tea on my desk, saying, "This is for you"? All I knew was, I had loved her for so, like someone walking alone in the dark, finally seeing the first light of dawn. Even though her parents didn't like me, the bride price they demanded was incredibly high. Even though they made things difficult for me in every way at the wedding, and even though we eventually lost the baby, back then I truly believed I was the happiest person in the world. Being with her. Even suffering felt sweet. How foolish! In the darkness, a bitter smile crept onto my lips. I never imagined that in just 3 short years, the dream would shatter. The next morning, I was already packed and ready. But Ruyan was still in bed. I knocked on the door for a long time. She finally opened it, dressed in a burgundy slip, barefoot, with a face full of impatience. "Why are you in such a hurry?" I glanced at the clock. "If we're late, we'll have to reschedule the appointment." I paused for a moment. "You've been talking about getting a divorce for so long. Now we can finally make it happen. Aren't you happy?" "I'm happy," she smiled through gritted teeth. "Of course I'm happy. Especially now that Lin Ki is back. Quite considerate timing, isn't it? He knows exactly where it hurts." I nodded. "Let's go then." On the way, neither of us spoke a word. Ruyan kept a cold expression on her face, but I had already gotten used to it. I don't know when it started, but we stopped talking much. At first, I loved talking to her. After loving her for so many years, I had saved up so many things I wanted to share with her. Seeing a dog on the side of the road, hearing a beautiful song, watching an interesting movie. I would always share it with her, but she rarely responded, usually only when a lot of time had passed, and she needed something from me. Would she reply half-heartedly with a simple hymn? I couldn't lie to myself, thinking she was just naturally quiet, because I had seen the WeChat moments Lin Ki posted. In their chat history, Ruyan seemed like a completely different person, playful and sweet, responding to him instantly on every topic. As time went by, I stopped sending her messages too. When we arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, the staff tried to mediate between us for a long time. "Have your feelings really broken down?" Just as Ruyan was about to speak, I smiled and replied, "No, we had a flash marriage. There was never a strong emotional foundation to begin with, and now it just feels like we're not a good match anymore. We can't continue." Ruyan glanced at me, her expression complicated. The staff member tried to persuade us for a long time, but I deflected every attempt. Finally, she sighed and said, "You need a cooling off period. Go home and think about it. You two really look like a perfect match. You're both young and impulsive. Go home and focus on each other's good qualities." I thought for a moment. Ruyan is beautiful. In high school, she was the talk of the school. Her family background was excellent. Her parents owned a company. They were never short of money. While we were still taking the bus in college, she was driving a sports car, always seen with Lin Ki. She had a great personality too, always surrounded by friends. There was never a dull moment. She was a wonderful person, just not to me. As we left the Civil Affairs Bureau, the noon sunlight was so harsh it made me close my eyes. Ruyan thought I was crying. And finally, she gave a smug, "Regretting it now. Huh, too late." She stood in front of me, clearly shorter by a head, yet somehow towering over me with her arrogance. "I'll never go back to someone like you." I said nothing. I drove her home. When we got back, Ruyan laid on the couch, habitually staring at me. "Pour me a glass of water." I ignored her, dragging my suitcase out of the bedroom. "Where are you going?" she frowned. "I found a new place. I'm moving out today." As I packed, I continued calmly. "The things you bought me, I left them all in the bedroom closet. Who the hell cares?" Ruyan suddenly exploded in anger. I let out a faint smile. "We're getting a divorce. Might as well say a proper goodbye. Take care of yourself from now on. Drink less, your stomach isn't good." "Who do you think you are? You have no right to tell me that." She abruptly stood up, grabbing onto my suitcase. She opened the door, forcefully pushing and kicking me out. "If you want to leave, then just go already." Her eyebrows furrowed, and her eyes were filled with repressed fury. I looked at the suitcase on the ground, stunned for a moment. Then I stopped talking. I walked over, picked up the suitcase, and stepped into the elevator. I never looked back at her again. The gaze from behind me felt scorching, as if it were burning a hole into my back. But it was completely severed when the elevator doors finally closed. I didn't take the house because I didn't want anything to do with Ruyan anymore. I didn't want to see her things, smell her scent, or think about anything related to her. The truth is, I had already thought about divorce for a long time. Ruyan didn't love me. I had always known that. I just thought, after all these years, even if her heart was made of stone, it should have softened by now. But after all this time, she still didn't love me, and now my warmth had run out. Only then did I realize there are some people who truly can't be replaced. That smile she had for Lin Ki, no matter how hard I tried, I would never see it. I moved into the apartment I had rented earlier. Before I had even finished unpacking, Ruyan's mother called me. "Zian, did you buy the stomach medicine for Ruyan? I heard her stomach's been acting up again lately." Not to be harsh, but when Ruyan wanted to marry you, I didn't agree from the start. Don't take offense. But what exactly do you have to offer that matches our Ruyan? You're even living in our house, which is far worse than the one she used to live in with Zilin. I only put up with you because you treated Ruyan well. She reluctantly let me in the door. But look at what's happened all these years, and you two haven't had any kids. I don't like saying this, but is it because something's wrong with you physically? Let me tell you, Ruyan can't go without having children. If you have any problems, you better say so early. Ruyan is still young now, but don't waste her time. I gripped my phone tightly. Ruyan's family had money, and her mother had always looked down on my family. Back then, my parents had to smile and play nice for my sake, even though it was like throwing warm affection at her cold indifference. All these years, she's never liked me. No matter how hard I tried to please her, it never worked. The truth is, this wasn't the first time she said these things. Every time we met, and every time she called, she would repeat the same speech about how I had married above my station with Ruyan, and how her family had been so generous to put up with me. Ruyan never stood up for me. She only told me, "Isn't my mom right?" She would say that her mom had already made great efforts to accept me, so I always endured it. But this time, there was no need for me to endure any longer. With a blank expression, I said, "Auntie, we're already divorced. I have no obligation to buy her medicine anymore. And by the way, you didn't give birth to me, nor did you raise me, so you have no right to boss me around. If you can't stand me, I suggest you blind yourself so you won't have to look." After saying that, I didn't care what her reaction was. I hung up immediately, blocked the number, and after thinking for a moment, I left all the family WeChat groups from Ruyan's side. I deleted and blocked all contact information of her family members, including hers. After finishing all of this, I finally let out a long sigh of relief. Lying on the bed, I realized the divorce wasn't as painful as I had imagined. Ruyan had always liked to use divorce as a threat. Whenever we argued, it seemed she had figured out that I would never leave. She took advantage of my love and hurt me without restraint, just as she expected. The first time she threatened me with divorce, I was terrified. She was right. I knelt in front of her like a dog, apologizing, saying I would change as long as she didn't leave me. I would do anything she wanted. I covered my eyes with the palm of my hand, feeling a bit of wetness. But even heartbreak can become something you grow numb to. Over and over again, the pain, after endless repetition, gradually turned into numbness. The chains, once deeply embedded in my flesh, finally rotted away. Now all that was left was relief. Ruyan didn't contact me again. She seemed to have completely disappeared from my life. Until 2 weeks later, a classmate suddenly reached out, asking if I would be attending tomorrow night's class reunion. I initially wanted to decline. I really didn't want to see Ruyan again. But on second thought, I realized I wasn't the one at fault. I had no reason to avoid her, so I agreed to go. At the reunion, I was chatting with some others when suddenly, the door swung open. Ruyan stepped inside, wearing a fitted white satin dress, the shimmering fabric accentuating her curves even more. Under the lights, her eyes sparkled, so beautiful that she seemed to be glowing. Behind her followed Lin Ki, dressed in a custom-tailored suit. As soon as the two walked in, everyone started cheering. Old Lin and the school beauty are back together. I told you, you two wouldn't break up. Back then, it was such a huge deal. Come on, sit over here. Wasn't it? I still remember when Ki went abroad. Ruyan drank so much she nearly ended up in the hospital. So many years. She must have been waiting for him all along. When I married Ruyan, she said she didn't like formalities, so we didn't have a wedding. After the marriage, she never posted anything about me on her social media. She even kept her distance from me at gatherings, saying it was to avoid drawing attention. It's funny, really. We were married for 3 years. But aside from a few close friends, no one knew we were together. Ruyan's gaze cut through the crowd and landed on me. There was a hint of mockery in her eyes. Her lips curled into a smirk. I didn't look at her. I turned away and continued talking to the person next to me. Her face darkened. She sat down next to Lin Ki. So, Ki, you're back? I heard you were doing really well abroad. Are you planning to stay and contribute to the motherland now? Someone joked. Lin Ki smiled with a trace of pride. I'm at the age now where I should think about settling down. My family's been pressuring me. He didn't say anyone's name directly, but everyone started laughing. Of course, Ryan's been waiting for you all these years. Now that you're back, it seems like the big day is close, huh? Lin Ki didn't respond. He smiled, acknowledging the comment without words. Hey, Ruyan, you really are devoted. But our Lin is now a successful man. Not to mention, he's handsome too. You two make such a perfect couple. But speaking of handsome, I always thought King Yu was pretty good looking too. Back in school, there was always a debate about who was the most handsome between you and Ki. I was just about to speak when Ruyan sneered, "What good is just being handsome? Some people can't think about anything but love all day long. Being a housewife has made them stupid. No wonder nobody loves them." My face went pale. I knew she was talking about me. Back when she was busy with her startup. If I had focused on my own career too, we wouldn't have had time for each other. So for her, I gave up all my job offers, stayed at home, and took care of her. The room fell silent. One classmate quickly tried to ease the tension. You can't say that. Back then, King Yu had offers from several top companies. He made millions with a project while still in college. I remember one company offering him a $3 million annual salary. But why didn't you take it? He asked curiously. Because I got married, I replied. Ruyan froze, turning to look at me. I lowered my gaze and calmly said, yeah, I married a worthless woman. For her, I turned down all my opportunities just to take care of her. But trash is trash. No matter how much you sacrifice for it. At least I cut my losses in time. A male classmate chimed in, exactly. Some women are just like that. When they get married, they can't wait to find a servant to take care of them. Then they complain that their husband can't earn money, calling him a useless loser with no ability. In the end, they want all the good things for themselves. But trash like that deserves to be alone forever. The topic quickly shifted, and the classmates started discussing their own relationships and marriages, talking about how you can't be blinded by love. Otherwise, if you run into a scumbag, it's all over. I had always been compliant and obedient to Ruyan. This was the first time I had ever spoken sarcastically to her. She stared directly at me, seeming a bit bewildered. She wanted to say something, but her voice got lost in the noisy chatter. After the reunion ended, I got in my car, ready to leave. Just as I started the engine, someone knocked on my window. It was one of Ryan's close friends, looking a little uneasy. Yujie, Ryan's stomach problems are acting up again. Could you take her home? Out of everyone here, only 1 or 2 people knew about our marriage. I frowned. Where's Lin Ki? He hesitated for a moment. He offered to take her, but Ryan didn't want him to. She always listens to you. I glanced over to where she was standing, not far away. Ryan was at the entrance of the hotel, bathed in the warm orange light. Her gaze briefly met mine, but quickly shifted away as if burned. Lin Ki was standing beside her, saying something, trying to drape his suit jacket over her shoulders. She seemed distracted, frowning and waving him off. We're divorced. I turned my eyes away. Sorry. You'll have to ask someone else. Yujie wanted to say more, but I nodded slightly at him, and then drove off without another word. In the rearview mirror, I saw Ryan still watching me, slightly hunched over, her face pale. I didn't look back at her again. I drove onto the road. Everyone around Ryan knew how much I cared about her. Her stomach problems started after Lin Ki left, a consequence of her drinking too much. Over the past 3 years, I went from someone who knew nothing about housework to a model husband who could cook all kinds of soups and meals for her, all to better take care of her health. I was the one who bought her stomach medicine, carefully dividing it into daily doses and slipping them into her clothes. When it was time to take her meds, I'd call and remind her. Once she forgot to bring her medicine on a business trip. In the middle of the night, when her stomach started to hurt, I braved the cold of winter and took the earliest flight to bring her the medicine. By the time I arrived, she was already asleep. So I stood outside her door for several hours, until I was covered in snow. When Ryan finally woke up and opened the door, she only said, "You didn't have to go through all that. Hurry up and leave." It was that time, on the way back, that I got into a car accident. I was in the hospital for a month, and she never came to see me. Memories gnawed at my heart like insects. Not in a way that was overwhelming, but in a slow, insistent pain. It wasn't sharp, but it was impossible to ignore. Sometimes I didn't understand myself either. I wasn't normally this kind of person. Why did I become so submissive when it came to her? But when feelings were still there, it was like that. Love is always irrational, easily capable of destroying all of a person's principles. With just one smile from her, all of my boundaries would crumble. I let her hurt me again and again, but now all my love has been completely worn away. The ingenue who once had eyes only for her had been slowly crushed to death by her own hands. The next day, just as I was about to leave the house, I received a call from my parents. They said both they and Ryan's parents were there, and they wanted me to come home to talk. I had anticipated this day would come. Divorce wasn't a small matter. It involved both families. Even though I didn't want to go back, we had to settle things sooner or later. After just 2 short weeks away, the place that was once my home now felt strangely unfamiliar. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt a sense of oppression. Both sets of parents were sitting on the couch, while Ryan sat on the side, absently playing with her manicure, her head down, not saying a word. Perhaps they realized that I was serious this time. For once, Ryan's mother didn't immediately start yelling at me. Instead, she frowned and said, "Zian, I know you young people can be temperamental, but divorce is no small matter. You can't just divorce on a whim." I chuckled softly. "Auntie, you should ask your daughter about that. She's the one who wanted the divorce. If I remember correctly, this is the 13th time Ryan has brought up divorce, since she's so determined." I'm simply giving her what she wants. Liu Ryan's mother forced a smile. Are you YAN ... This kid has the temperament of a child. She just hasn't grown up yet. She's immature. Is that so? I responded coldly. She's half a year older than me. Is there some developmental issue? She's 25 years old now, old enough to have children, but still not mature enough in her mind? Liu Ryan's mother fell silent, unable to continue speaking. Liu Ryan's father cleared his throat. Zian. Liu Ryan doesn't know any better. As her parents, we apologize on her behalf. But when problems arise in a marriage, it's never just one person's fault. After all, it takes two to tango. Uncle, let me give you a slap. And you tell me whether it makes a sound. We were already divorced, so there was no need for me to swallow my pride any longer. I decided to say whatever I wanted. I walked up to Liu Ryan, speaking firmly. Liu Ryan, stop pretending to be dead. Tell your parents. In our marriage, exactly what role I played. Your ex-boyfriend came back, and you said you didn't like men like me who are all about love, spending their days revolving around you at home. But wasn't it your family who said you were in poor health and asked me to quit my job to take care of you? All these years, I've been doing laundry, cooking, and preparing 3 meals a day for you. Because of your stomach issues, someone who loves spicy food, haven't made a single spicy dish at home since. Liu Ryan, ask yourself honestly, was that my fault? Liu Ryan remained silent. Her mother couldn't help but interject. Don't just talk about her. All these years, you haven't had a child. At that time, you made Ryan have a child out of wedlock. We were never happy about it. And in the end, the child wasn't even kept. Who knows if there's something wrong with you physically? I suddenly turned around, raising my voice. Yes, she got pregnant before marriage, but it wasn't just my decision. If Liu Ryan didn't want it, could I have forced her? Why is it all my fault? Didn't I take responsibility afterward? You say the child wasn't kept. But why don't you ask your daughter? Why the baby wasn't kept? She went and had an abortion behind my back, telling me she never wanted this child in the first place. So whose fault is that? Is it mine? I hadn't intended to lose my temper, but the emotions I had suppressed for so long came pouring out. Even I couldn't control myself anymore. Is it wrong that I gave everything with all my heart? Why did loving someone become a mistake? By the end, I was almost screaming. Liu Ryan, tell me. What did I do wrong? My mother stood up, shocked. Didn't you say it was because the baby was unhealthy during the checkup, and that's why it was aborted? I lowered my head and bitterly laughed. I didn't want you to blame her. I was too stupid. My mother's eyes immediately reddened, and she questioned Liu Ryan. Ryan, all these years, we've never treated you unfairly. We've treated you like our own daughter. We've asked ourselves, and we know that's true. When your mother demanded $880,000 for the bride price, when you refused to have a wedding, even when your family constantly looked down on King Yu, we never said anything. We knew King Yu loved you, and we just wanted you two to be happy together. And this is how you treat him. The color drained from Liu Ryan's face in an instant. I'm sorry, Mom. Don't call me Mom. I'm not your mother. My mom shouted, her voice loud and full of fury, her eyes blazing with anger. Even my father's face darkened. His head lowered, fists clenched tightly. Liu Ryan, I don't know why you brought your parents and mine here, but for all these years, I haven't done anything to wrong you. I don't want things to get ugly. Let's end this on good terms. I was exhausted. Liu Ryan raised her head. Her eyes filled with mixed emotions. Her lips moved slightly, and after a long silence, she whispered, you didn't do anything wrong. Getting to this point, it's all my fault. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Just give me a chance to make it up to you. I won't act like this again. A trace of sarcasm rose in my eyes. Of course you didn't mean to. You've been enjoying everything I've done for you. while looking down on me at the same time. Ruyan, sometimes I really can't understand. You never gave me anything, nor did you have the right to decide anything for me. You just kept demanding from me, taking advantage of the fact that I loved you. Even if I dug my heart out and gave it to you, you would still complain that it smelled of blood. I loved you, so I treated you well. But you used my love to hurt me again and again, always from a position above me. I leaned in close to her face and whispered, "Who do you think you are? Ruyan, what gives you the right?" Ruyan's eyes trembled, her face pale as if she had been gravely ill. Faced with my questions, she couldn't say a single word. It was as if my words had pierced her heart like 1,000 arrows. For the first time, she was at a disadvantage in front of me. Her once slender yet resilient back slowly bent under the weight of it all. Linky came back, I continued. You told me you wouldn't let him into the company, but then you kept him there. Ruyan, you were unfaithful to our marriage. After breaking your promises, you blamed everything on me, claiming my mind was only focused on love and emotions. Isn't this perfect now? I'm letting you have him. Ruyan quickly lifted her head. I have nothing to do with Linky, she pleaded. We're just colleagues. I sneered. Are you saying you never had feelings for him again? Do regular colleagues need to eat together every day, constantly texting each other? Ruyan, do you think everyone is a fool, willing to be deceived by you? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I stood up and said quietly, I've said all I need to say. I hope you don't disturb me anymore. Just as I was about to step out the door, Ruyan called after me. Her voice trembled, like someone who had been hiding behind a mask their whole life, finally being torn apart and seeing themselves for the first time. And Kingu, if I'm willing to change, is there still a chance for us? I turned back to look at her. There was a rare sense of bewilderment in her eyes. Ruyan had always been proud and indifferent in front of me, looking down at me with disdain. In this relationship, she had always been the one in control, always the one above me. I had never seen her look so afraid. It's too late, I said softly. Then I closed the door behind me. After leaving Ruyan, I started sending out resumes, planning to return to work. Fortunately, it hadn't been too long since I graduated, and the projects I worked on were impressive enough. Many companies were still eager to hire me. In her eyes, I was probably worthless, not even comparable to Lin Kai's shadow. That's why in this relationship, I constantly fell into self-doubt. Every day I lived in pain, asking myself if I was truly that inadequate. But now I finally realized she didn't get to define me. I'm doing just fine. That evening, I went home, cooked myself a big meal, planning to reward myself. In a few days, the cooling off period would be over, and I would be free from this relationship for good. But a phone call interrupted my good mood. Lin Kai's voice sounded distorted on the other end. Let's talk. I looked at the chopsticks in my hand, feeling a bit impatient. I have nothing to talk about with you. And you don't want me to keep ignoring you, do you? Some things are better discussed. Even though he was the one seeking me out, his attitude was still incredibly arrogant. I hung up the phone without hesitation. The next day, when he called again, his tone had softened considerably. I just have a few things I want to discuss with you. It'll only take an hour. I won't take up too much of your time. I didn't want to meet him, but I also didn't want him bothering me endlessly. I had no choice but to find a time to meet with him. Linky got straight to the point. I don't want you to contact Ruyan anymore, since you two are divorced. End it completely. Don't keep things lingering between you. I looked at this man. He was dressed in a custom-made Italian suit, his hair slicked back neatly. Handsome yet professional. It's no wonder Ruyan had liked him for so many years. You know, I was with her first, he said. We had a great relationship. If it weren't for your interference, we might have gotten back together a long time ago. Now that you're divorced, I don't want you interfering in her life anymore. I chuckled coldly. I already blocked her. Where's the so-called lingering connection? Lin Ki looked incredulous. Liu Ryan has been completely distracted these days. If it's not you still contacting her, who else could it be? You people really have a knack for making up your own stories, I said with a laugh, raising my voice. Interference? What exactly did I interfere with? You two had already broken up when we got together. And that's still considered interference? Liu Ryan didn't marry me because I forced her to. It's not like I held a knife to her throat and made her be with me. Why don't you go ask her about it? And as for me reaching out to her ... I put my coffee down and looked directly at Lin Ki. Rest assured, if you like her, then take good care of her. I'm no longer interested in that woman. Lin Ki looked like he wanted to say more, but his eyes suddenly widened in shock. Liu Ryan rushed past me from the side and grabbed him by the arm, pulling him up quickly. She stormed over, furious. Are you crazy? Who told you to come looking for him? Lin Kai's face darkened. What's wrong with me talking to him? You're getting a divorce, aren't you? Why are you still thinking about him? Weren't you the one who told me he was boring? That all he did was revolve around you? You said he annoyed you, didn't you? Liu Ryan froze, then turned to look at me. I crossed my arms, indifferent. I had heard these words too many times by now, and they no longer hurt me. Liu Ryan gritted her teeth. You're insane. Whatever I do with him is none of your business. We haven't finalized the divorce yet. We're still married. Lin Ki stared at her in shock. We were together first. And you said you couldn't forget about me, didn't you, Liu Ryan? Have you forgotten about us? That's all in the past now, Liu Ryan said coldly. I have a husband. You have nothing to do with me anymore. She stared at Lin Ki and slowly said, I'm warning you. Don't ever come looking for him again. Otherwise, I won't be so polite. Lin Kai's face turned ashen. He stared at Liu Ryan for a long moment before letting out a bitter laugh. Well played, Liu Ryan. He jerked his hand free from hers, his back looking somewhat defeated as he quickly left the cafe. Liu Ryan pulled me outside the cafe. She was silent for a while, then finally spoke. I'm sorry. You were right. At first, I did have the intention of getting back together with Lin Ki. I was too young back then, and being dumped left me feeling so unsatisfied. So when he came back, I wanted to show him how successful I'd become and make him regret it. I mistook that obsession for love. She wiped her face and in a low voice said, only now do I realize it. I stopped loving him a long time ago. At some point, snow had started falling, softly drifting onto Liu Ryan's shoulders. But she didn't seem to notice. She just smiled bitterly. After you said all those things that day, I went home and thought for a long time. I realized I'm really the worst. I thought you couldn't live without me, that you depended on me. So I used your love for me, hurting you without a second thought. I even looked down on you. But now, when I think about it, you were just loving someone. You loved openly, wholeheartedly. Your love was noble. I was the one who was the most despicable. The distant streetlights flickered on, and a snowflake fell onto her eyelashes, melting into a tiny droplet. Her voice grew quieter since you left. There's been no one to make me soup when my stomach hurts. When I want to take my medicine, I can't find it. I wanted to buy more, but I realized I don't even know the name of the medicine. Now I see. It was never you who couldn't live without me. It's me who can't live without you. I'm lost every day. I hate this feeling of being so unsure, but I really don't know what to do. The bed is so cold, and the coldness scares me. Liu Ryan covered her face, letting out a choked laugh. In a raspy voice, She said, "It turns out I've loved you for a long time." She had said so many things. It actually surprised me. When we were together, Ruyan had always been so stingy with her words. I had been performing a one-man show all along. But it turns out she could say so much too, just at the wrong time. I no longer wanted to listen. I reached out, catching a cold snowflake in my palm. Ruyan, you don't love me. You just can't handle the thought of the person who always revolved around you leaving. You're just afraid no one will ever love you the way I did. I turned to walk away, but Ruyan grabbed me by the arm. She hunched over slightly, her expression almost pitiful. "Can you, please?" Ruyan, have never begged anyone in my life. But I'm begging you now, please give me another chance, okay? I was wrong before. I didn't realize how important you were to me. I regret it. I pulled her hand away, cutting her off. Ruyan, no one will stand in place waiting for you forever. I'm not your parents. You're their only daughter. But to me, there are plenty of women. Ruyan stood there for a long time, calling after me loudly, her voice carrying a hint of desperation. And Yu in the swirling wind and snow. She was wearing something thin, and her eyes began to redden. "I won't divorce you." I turned back, my voice calm. "Then I'll file for divorce." Ruyan, you're making a scene. Don't act like a dog." It was as if my words had choked her. She stood still, staring at me, her expression filled with sorrow and regret. A tear fell suddenly from her eye, a tear that echoed the words she once said to me when we were getting divorced. Now, I gave her back the same words she once said to me. I finally understood her. When you stop loving someone, hurtful words can slip out so easily. She finally regretted it. But unfortunately, the right answer came too late. It had already turned into the wrong one. Lin Ki never managed to gain a foothold in Ruyan's family company. It turned out his resume was fabricated. He had only ever interviewed on Wall Street. He never passed the interview. His supposed experience at Morgan Stanley was a lie as well. The whole thing came to light after he took on a project and completely botched it. He couldn't even figure out where the decimal points went on the proposal, causing the company massive losses. The vice manager found something suspicious, so they investigated Lin Kai's background. That's when they discovered he had gotten in by relying on Ruyan's connections, exaggerating his abilities. Things escalated quickly from there. Lin Ki was forced to slink out of the company in disgrace. His reputation was ruined. He couldn't find another job in the industry. He had no choice but to return to his hometown in another province. It seems like fate has a way of balancing things out. I, on the other hand, was thriving in my career. A well-reputed company in the industry approached me through a headhunter, offering me a position as vice president. I planned to work there for a few years, gaining more experience. Then I'd start my own business. While my life was going well, Ruyan's wasn't. She ended up in the hospital again after drinking too much. Her friend called me, sounding panicked. "Yujie, I'm begging you. Ryan's been drinking all night. No matter what we say, she won't stop. They're begging you to come see her. Is that okay?" I paused for a moment and said, "Sorry. I have a meeting today. I'm busy." "She's been calling your name the whole time, crying and apologizing." Her friend, trying to defend her, said, "She really loves you. How can you be so heartless?" I chuckled coldly when I was in a car accident bringing her medicine. She was busy video chatting with Lin Ki, flirting. I called her several times, but she wouldn't pick up. In the end, I had to call 120 to save my own life. The doctor said if I had arrived any later, I might not have survived. My ribs were broken, and one almost punctured my lung. But when Ruyan found out, all she said was got it. It was at that moment I realized my last shred of love for her had died. No matter how hard I tried, I could never warm her stone-cold heart. In terms of being heartless, I'm no match for her. I clenched my fists, said nothing, and hung up the phone. The love I had once desperately longed for. After all this time, I realized it was long gone. I no longer wanted it. Her parents then started calling me from different numbers. Ruyan's mother, once so domineering, now wept, begging Zian, Ruyan truly loves you. We were wrong before. We'll make it up to you. Okay, we'll return the wedding gifts and the bride price. Whatever you say goes. We won't argue. I couldn't help but laugh to myself. I really couldn't understand. Why is it that human nature can be so cheap? When you chase after them, they only see you as worthless. But when they realize you might leave, they finally see they have nothing to hold on to. Please, just come see Ruyan, they begged. Her stomach bleeding is severe. Even when she fainted, she kept calling your name. Her mother sobbed, barely able to catch her breath. There was a time when hearing about Ruyan's stomach pains would have filled me with unbearable heartache. But now, all I felt was irritation. I hung up the phone, picked up my meeting materials, and walked into the conference room. Where was this concern before? I thought. Even if she drinks herself to death now, I won't shed a single tear for her. I thought Ruyan was so ill that she wouldn't be able to finalize the divorce. But to my surprise, 3 days later, she showed up. She looked pale and haggard, her entire frame much thinner. She stood before me, wanting to say something. But in the end, she remained silent. She didn't try to cling to me anymore. Instead, she brought a new agreement, giving me all the assets. She was leaving with nothing. Think of this as my way of atoning, so that I can have the dignity to try and pursue you again. She smiled bitterly. I shook my head and sighed softly. If only you had realized sooner. Why let things get to this point? There was a time when I truly wanted to live happily with you. I gave everything I had to love you, laid it all bare before you, just hoping you'd look at me. I tried so hard, but even though things didn't work out, I don't regret it. Ruyan kept her head down for a long time. She whispered I was too foolish. There was a time when I could have been happy, but it's always when I lose something that I realize its value. She hesitated for a moment, then cautiously asked, "Can I still reach out to you?" As if afraid I'd be annoyed. She quickly added, "I won't disturb you often. Just give me a chance, so I can know that you're doing well." There's no need for that. I smiled at her. The past is in the past. We both need to move forward. But before I left, I smoothed out the stray hair on her temple one last time. When you meet someone who loves you in the future, don't treat them like you treated me. Loving someone isn't wrong. The person being loved shouldn't trample on someone else's heart, because love is precious, and it can disappear at any moment. Ruyan's face darkened, as if my words had turned into a blade, stabbing deep into her. With the light behind her, I couldn't make out her expression, but I could hear the tremble of pain in her voice. She choked out, "All right. Then ... goodbye. I wish you happiness." We waved goodbye, and just as I turned to leave, she suddenly called out, "And King Yu," she cried out, "and King Yu. I can't be happy without you." I swallowed the bitterness rising in my chest, but I didn't look back. I walked forward into the sunlight. When I love, I all my heart, open and unashamed, giving everything I have. But when I stop loving, I never look back. Everything from the past has already faded. I won't look behind me. I'll only keep moving forward. And that's where this story ends. Farewell, Ruyan.